Thirukural, also known as the Kural, is a classic Tamil text composed by the ancient Tamil philosopher and poet Thiruvalluvar. The text is considered one of the most important works in Tamil literature and is often referred to as the Tamil Veda. The Thirukural consists of 1,330 couplets, or kurals, which are divided into three sections: Aram, virtue; Poral, wealth; and Inbam, love. Each kural is comprised of 7 words, with each section containing 10 chapters and 33 kurals per chapter. The first section, Aram, is focused on moral and ethical values, such as honesty, gratitude, and generosity. The second section, Poral, discusses the importance of wealth, governance, and social and political structures. The final section, Inbam, explores the theme of love and the importance of relationships, including romantic love, familial love, and friendship. One of the unique features of the Thirukural is its universality. Despite being written over 2,000 years ago, the text is still relevant today and provides guidance on various aspects of life. The text has been translated into many languages and has been widely read and studied across the world. The Thirukural is also known for its concise and poetic language. The couplets are written in a simple and elegant style, making them accessible to all. The text is characterized by its use of imagery, metaphor, and symbolism, which add depth and nuance to the ideas presented. In addition to its literary value, the Thirukural is also regarded as a source of spiritual and philosophical wisdom. The text presents a humanistic worldview that emphasizes the importance of compassion, selflessness, and humility. Overall, the Thirukural is a timeless masterpiece of Tamil literature that continues to inspire and enlighten readers across the world. Its message of moral and ethical values, the importance of wealth and governance, and the role of love and relationships in human life is as relevant today as it was when it was first written. The Thirukural is also noted for its structure and organization. Each kural is self-contained, and each chapter is thematically cohesive, making it easy for readers to navigate and understand the text. The Thirukural's influence on Tamil culture and society cannot be overstated. It has been a source of guidance and inspiration for generations of Tamils, and its teachings have been incorporated into various aspects of Tamil life, from education to politics to art. The Thirukural's impact is not limited to Tamil Nadu, however. The text has also influenced other cultures and societies, particularly in Southeast Asia, where it has been translated and studied for centuries. The text's universal values and themes have made it a source of inspiration for people across the world. In recent years, efforts have been made to promote the Thirukural and its teachings to a wider audience. Various initiatives, such as Thirukural clubs and competitions, have been established to encourage the study and appreciation of the text. The Tamil Nadu government has also declared January 15th as Thiruvalluvar Day, to honor the poet and his legacy. In conclusion, the Thirukural is a masterpiece of Tamil literature that has stood the test of time. Its timeless teachings on morality, governance, and relationships continue to inspire and enlighten readers across the world. Its universal values and themes make it a valuable cultural treasure that deserves to be celebrated and studied for generations to come. To have a firm friendship with the good is like a road that leads to the gods, but to have fellowship with the wicked is like a path that heads to hell. The greatest wealth is the abundance of contentment. Learning is a wealth that none can destroy, hence it should be acquired from the cradle to the grave. The world will bless with endless grace those who possess a wealth of kindness in their hearts. A man's worth is measured by his wisdom, his goodness is an ornament to his character. Sweet words are like honey, they please the listener's ear and stick to his heart. Do not speak ill of others, it will return to you in equal measure. A gentle word, a kind look, a good-natured smile can work wonders and accomplish miracles. As a single drop of water will not make a great ocean, a single good deed will not make a great character. Great men of the world have been great because of their ability to turn adversity into an advantage. To refrain from giving even a small help to those in distress is to commit a great sin. The greatest charity is to provide the means whereby another may help himself. A friend who remains steadfast in times of adversity is a true friend indeed. He who is content with what he has, and does not envy others, is truly blessed. He who desires happiness must strive to be virtuous, for virtue is the source of all happiness. The wise man who guards his tongue and his temper will be free from trouble and distress. The man who is grateful for small favors will be blessed with greater ones. The fire of anger is like a conflagration that consumes everything in its path. The wise man who knows the power of words will use them sparingly and with great care. The truly great man is he who makes himself the servant of all. The true wealth of a man is his knowledge and wisdom, not his material possessions. The fragrance of flowers spreads only in the direction of the wind. But the goodness of a person spreads in all directions. He who is ignorant of the true nature of things will suffer in this world and the next. As the bee extracts honey from the flower without injuring it, the wise should take the good from all and leave the evil. The most precious treasure a man can possess is the love and respect of his fellow beings. The beauty of a woman is not in her outward appearance, but in her inner qualities. He who thinks before he speaks will never regret what he has said. A man's true worth can be measured by the depth of his compassion. The man who is free from fear is truly blessed. The greatest joy a man can experience is to do a good deed. The best way to win the favor of the gods is to practice charity and compassion towards all beings. It is better to light a single candle than to curse the darkness. A man who is truthful and honest will never be in want of anything. One who seeks knowledge from the wise will gain understanding and wisdom in abundance. A true friend is one who understands your past, believes in your future, and accepts you just the way you are. A man's greatness can be measured by his ability to forgive. The man who lives in harmony with nature will enjoy a long and happy life. True happiness can only be found within oneself, not in external objects. A man who is humble and meek will be exalted in due time. A good reputation is more valuable than all the riches in the world. The noblest charity is to prevent another from doing wrong. The wise man knows that knowledge is power, and that the only true wisdom is in knowing that you know nothing. A man's character is like his shadow, which follows him wherever he goes. A man who speaks the truth will always find friends. The greatest gift a man can give to his children is a good education. The truly wise man does not seek power, but rather seeks to empower others. The man who is free from attachment and desire will never suffer from sorrow or disappointment. The man who is wise and prudent will avoid all actions that lead to regret. The man who is kind and compassionate to all living beings will find peace and happiness in life. The man who is true to his word and his principles will be respected and admired by all. The man who is steadfast in his faith and convictions will never be swayed by temptation or fear. The man who is just and fair in his dealings with others will never be accused of wrongdoing. The man who is disciplined and self-controlled will never be a slave to his desires. The man who is always striving to improve himself will never be satisfied with mediocrity. The man who is grateful and thankful for his blessings will always find joy and contentment in life. The man who is always ready to forgive others will find peace and tranquility in his heart. The man who is humble and unassuming will always be respected and admired by others. The man who is patient and perseveres will always overcome obstacles and challenges. The man who is true to himself and his principles will never be swayed by the opinions of others. The man who is wise and prudent will always act in accordance with reason and good judgment. The man who is free from envy and jealousy will find peace and happiness in life. The man who is respectful to his parents and elders will always be blessed with their love and guidance. The man who is honest and trustworthy will always be surrounded by loyal friends and companions. The man who is calm and composed in the face of adversity will never be defeated by it. The man who is always mindful of his own shortcomings and weaknesses will never be arrogant or prideful. The man who is diligent and hardworking will always be rewarded for his efforts. The man who is generous and giving to others will always be blessed with abundance. The man who is always learning and growing will never become stagnant or complacent. The man who is always willing to forgive others will never be burdened by resentment or bitterness. The man who is humble and respectful towards all living beings will find true enlightenment. The man who is virtuous and righteous will always be guided by his conscience. The man who is always grateful and content with what he has will never be greedy or selfish. The man who is always truthful and sincere in his words and actions will never be accused of deception or fraud. The man who is patient and tolerant towards others will always be blessed with peace and harmony. The man who is always striving to improve himself will never be satisfied with mediocrity. The man who is fearless and courageous will never be intimidated by danger or adversity. The man who is always mindful of his own mortality will never take life for granted. The man who is always guided by his conscience and moral principles will never be corrupted by power or wealth. The man who is always respectful and considerate towards women will be blessed with their love and affection. The man who is always generous and charitable towards the poor and needy will always be rewarded with divine blessings. The man who is always mindful of his own limitations and weaknesses will never be arrogant or conceited. The man who is always self-reliant and independent will never be a burden to others. The man who is always kind and compassionate towards animals will be blessed with their love and loyalty. The man who is always respectful and obedient towards his superiors will be blessed with their guidance and support. The man who is always humble and unassuming will never be despised or rejected by others. The man who is always mindful of his own mortality will live each day to the fullest and never waste a moment. The man who is always truthful and sincere in his words and actions will always be respected and admired by others. The man who is always calm and composed will never be ruled by his emotions. The man who is always mindful of his own faults and shortcomings will never be proud or vain. The man who is always willing to help others will always be surrounded by grateful and loyal friends. The man who is always mindful of his own mortality will never be attached to material possessions or worldly pleasures. The man who is always honest and sincere in his dealings will never be deceived or defrauded by others. The man who is always patient and understanding towards others will never be quick to judge or condemn. The man who is always guided by his conscience and moral principles will never compromise his integrity or honor. The man who is always willing to learn from his mistakes will never repeat them. The man who is always mindful of the needs and feelings of others will never be insensitive or cruel. The man who is always humble and respectful towards his peers will never be jealous or envious of their success. The man who is always willing to forgive others will never be burdened by resentment or bitterness. The man who is always mindful of the transience of life will never waste time on trivial pursuits. The man who is always guided by reason and wisdom will never be swayed by superstition or ignorance. The man who is always fair and impartial in his judgments will never be accused of favoritism or bias. The man who is always truthful and sincere in his words and actions will never be caught in a lie or deception. The man who is always mindful of his own mortality will live each day with purpose and meaning. The man who is always respectful and considerate towards his parents will be blessed with their love and blessings. The man who is always willing to listen to the opinions of others will never be narrow-minded or dogmatic. The man who is always mindful of the needs and feelings of his family will never neglect or abandon them. The man who is always guided by his conscience and moral principles will never compromise his values or beliefs. The man who is always grateful and appreciative of the good fortune in his life will never be plagued by envy or discontent. The man who is always humble and modest in his achievements will never be accused of arrogance or pride. The man who is always generous and charitable towards others will be blessed with abundance and prosperity. The man who is always mindful of his own limitations and weaknesses will never be overconfident or reckless. The man who is always respectful and considerate towards women will be loved and respected by them. The man who is always willing to take responsibility for his actions and decisions will never be accused of cowardice or irresponsibility. The man who is always willing to learn from others will never be ignorant or uninformed. The man who is always mindful of the impermanence of worldly pleasures will never be attached to them. The man who is always compassionate and empathetic towards others will never be cold or callous. The man who is always willing to give his best effort in all that he does will never be mediocre or average. The man who is always patient and tolerant towards others will never be quick to anger or resentment. The man who is always honest and trustworthy in his dealings will never be accused of deceit or treachery. The man who is always respectful and considerate towards the elderly will be blessed with their wisdom and guidance. The man who is always willing to help and support those in need will be loved and respected by all. The man who is always humble and modest in his speech will never be accused of bragging or boasting. The man who is always mindful of the consequences of his actions will never act impulsively or recklessly. The man who is always respectful and considerate towards animals will be loved and respected by nature. The man who is always willing to forgive himself for his mistakes will never be burdened by guilt or shame. The man who is always focused and disciplined in his efforts will achieve greatness in all that he does. The man who is always willing to sacrifice his own comfort and happiness for the sake of others will be blessed with true joy and fulfillment. The man who is always mindful of the needs and feelings of others will never be accused of selfishness or cruelty. The man who is always grateful and appreciative of the blessings in his life will attract even more abundance and prosperity. The man who is always humble and modest in his achievements will be admired and respected by all. The man who is always willing to listen to the opinions and ideas of others will never be narrow-minded or prejudiced. The man who is always mindful of the impermanence of life will never be attached to worldly pleasures or possessions. The man who is always compassionate and merciful towards others will be blessed with the same kindness and grace in return. The man who is always honest and truthful in his dealings will never be accused of dishonesty or fraud. The man who is always respectful and considerate towards his parents will be blessed with their love and blessings. The man who is always willing to work hard and persevere through challenges will achieve success and fulfillment. The man who is always willing to learn from his mistakes and grow from them will never be stagnant or complacent. The man who is always kind and compassionate towards his enemies will overcome them with love and understanding. The man who is always mindful of his own faults and weaknesses will never be arrogant or prideful. The man who is always humble and respectful towards those of lower status will be blessed with their loyalty and devotion. The man who is always focused on his goals and determined in his efforts will achieve success beyond his wildest dreams. The man who is always mindful of the impermanence of everything in life will never be attached to any one thing or person. The man who is always patient and persistent in his efforts will overcome even the greatest obstacles and challenges. The man who is always willing to learn from others and open to new perspectives will never be ignorant or closed-minded. The man who is always humble and modest in his appearance and behavior will be admired and respected by all. The man who is always generous and charitable towards those in need will be blessed with abundance and prosperity in return. The man who is always willing to share his knowledge and wisdom with others will be a source of inspiration and guidance to all. The man who is always truthful and sincere in his words and actions will earn the trust and respect of others. The man who is always mindful of the impact of his words and actions on others will never cause harm or hurt. The man who is always mindful of his duty and responsibility towards his family will be blessed with their love and support. The man who is always mindful of the needs and welfare of his community will be a true leader and inspiration. The man who is always focused on his spiritual growth and development will achieve enlightenment and liberation. The man who is always grateful and appreciative of the people and experiences in his life will attract more blessings and joy. The man who is always mindful of the suffering and pain of others will be a source of comfort and support to them. The man who is always mindful of the power of his thoughts and emotions will have control over his own destiny. The man who is always calm and composed in the face of adversity and challenges will inspire others with his strength and resilience. The man who is always respectful and considerate towards all living beings will live a life of compassion and kindness. The man who is always mindful of the fleeting nature of life will live each day with gratitude and purpose. The man who is always mindful of the needs and feelings of his spouse will have a happy and fulfilling marriage. The man who is always mindful of his own limitations and weaknesses will never be overwhelmed or defeated. The man who is always mindful of the value of time and the fleeting nature of youth will make the most of every moment. The man who is always mindful of the interconnectedness of all living beings will live a life of harmony and peace. The man who is always mindful of the power of his own thoughts and emotions will never be a slave to them. The man who is always mindful of the impact of his actions on the environment will be a steward of the earth. The man who is always mindful of the importance of honesty and integrity will never compromise his principles. The man who is always mindful of the value of education and knowledge will never stop learning and growing. The man who is always mindful of the power of love and compassion will transform the world with his kindness. The man who is always mindful of the impermanence of wealth and material possessions will live a life of detachment and contentment. The man who is always mindful of the importance of self-discipline and self-control will master his own destiny. The man who is always mindful of the value of hard work and perseverance will achieve success and prosperity. The man who is always mindful of the importance of forgiveness and compassion will find peace and happiness in his relationships. The man who is always mindful of the impact of his actions on future generations will be a true visionary and leader. The man who is always mindful of the importance of humility and modesty will be respected and admired by others. The man who is always mindful of the beauty and wonder of the natural world will find joy and inspiration in his surroundings. The man who is always mindful of the importance of honesty and sincerity will earn the trust and respect of others. The man who is always mindful of the importance of self-improvement and personal growth will never be stagnant or complacent. The man who is always mindful of the interconnectedness of all things will live a life of harmony and balance. The man who is always mindful of the importance of kindness and compassion will spread joy and peace wherever he goes. The man who is always mindful of the importance of gratitude and appreciation will never take his blessings for granted. The man who is always mindful of the power of his words will use them wisely and responsibly. The man who is always mindful of the importance of honesty and transparency will never have to hide behind a facade. The man who is always mindful of the interconnectedness of all living beings will never be cruel or indifferent to the suffering of others. The man who is always mindful of the importance of balance and moderation will never be enslaved by his own desires. The man who is always mindful of the importance of courage and determination will never be defeated by adversity. The man who is always mindful of the importance of faith and spirituality will find meaning and purpose in his life. The man who is always mindful of the importance of friendship and companionship will never be lonely. The man who is always mindful of the importance of empathy and understanding will never be quick to judge or condemn others. The man who is always mindful of the importance of patience and endurance will never give up on his dreams. The man who is always mindful of the importance of loyalty and commitment will never betray those who trust him. The man who is always mindful of the importance of knowledge and educati will never be ignorant or uninformed. The man who is always mindful of the importance of justice and fairness will never discriminate or oppress others. The man who is always mindful of the importance of simplicity and frugality will never be enslaved by his own possessions. The man who is always mindful of the importance of discipline and self-control will never be enslaved by his own passions. The man who is always mindful of the importance of creativity and innovation will never be bound by tradition or convention. The man who is always mindful of the importance of respect and courtesy will always be welcome in the company of others. The man who is always mindful of the importance of truth and honesty will never be deceived or misled. The man who is always mindful of the impermanence of life will make the most of every moment and live without regrets. The man who is always mindful of the importance of humility and modesty will never be arrogant or conceited. The man who is always mindful of the importance of forgiveness and reconciliation will never be burdened by resentment or bitterness. The man who is always mindful of the importance of generosity and charity will never be stingy or selfish. The man who is always mindful of the importance of perseverance and determination will never give up on his goals. The man who is always mindful of the importance of cleanliness and hygiene will always be healthy and strong. The man who is always mindful of the importance of adaptability and flexibility will be able to weather any storm. The man who is always mindful of the importance of selflessness and sacrifice will always be held in high regard. The man who is always mindful of the importance of love and compassion will bring joy and happiness to everyone he meets. Importance of loyalty and devotion will never betray his loved ones. The man who is always mindful of the importance of self-awareness and introspection will be able to grow and evolve as a person. The man who is always mindful of the importance of gratitude and appreciation will never take anything for granted. The man who is always mindful of the importance of faith and trust will always find strength and guidance in times of difficulty. The man who is always mindful of the importance of balance and moderation will never be swayed by extremes. The man who is always mindful of the importance of sincerity and authenticity will never be false or insincere. The man who is always mindful of the importance of wisdom and discernment will always make sound decisions. The man who is always mindful of the importance of self-respect and dignity will never compromise his principles. The man who is always mindful of the importance of self-improvement and growth will never stagnate or become complacent. The man who is always mindful of the importance of fairness and impartiality will never show favoritism or bias. The man who is always mindful of the importance of self-reliance and independence will never be a burden on others. The man who is always mindful of the importance of unity and cooperation will always be able to achieve great things. The man who is always mindful of the importance of patience and forbearance will never be overcome by anger or frustration. The man who is always mindful of the importance of honesty and integrity will never resort to deceit or deception. The man who is always mindful of the importance of discipline and self-control will never be a slave to his passions. The man who is always mindful of the importance of learning and education will always be open to new ideas and perspectives. The man who is always mindful of the importance of empathy and understanding will never be cruel or callous. The man who is always mindful of the importance of sincerity and truthfulness will always be trusted and respected. The man who is always mindful of the importance of simplicity and humility will never be arrogant or boastful. The man who is always mindful of the importance of gratitude and contentment will never be envious or jealous. The man who is always mindful of the importance of diligence and hard work will always achieve his goals. The man who is always mindful of the importance of detachment and non-attachment will never be consumed by desire or attachment. The man who is always mindful of the importance of generosity and kindness will always be loved and respected. The man who is always mindful of the importance of forgiveness and compassion will never hold grudges or seek revenge. The man who is always mindful of the importance of selflessness and service will always be a source of inspiration and hope. The man who is always mindful of the importance of perseverance and determination will never give up on his dreams. The man who is always mindful of the importance of discipline and order will always be organized and efficient. The man who is always mindful of the importance of simplicity and frugality will never be wasteful or extravagant. The man who is always mindful of the importance of courage and bravery will never be intimidated by fear or danger. The man who is always mindful of the importance of loyalty and devotion will always be true to his word and his commitments. The man who is always mindful of the importance of justice and fairness will always stand up for what is right. The man who is always mindful of the importance of mindfulness and self-awareness will always be in control of his thoughts and actions. The man who is always mindful of the importance of respect and courtesy will always be treated with respect and courtesy. The man who is always mindful of the importance of wisdom and discernment will always make good decisions. The man who is always mindful of the importance of loyalty and friendship will always be surrounded by loyal and true friends. The man who is always mindful of the importance of patience and perseverance will always overcome obstacles and challenges. The man who is always mindful of the importance of self-respect and dignity will never stoop to dishonorable behavior. The man who is always mindful of the importance of gratitude and thankfulness will always find reasons to be thankful and grateful. The man who is always mindful of the importance of self-reflection and introspection will always learn from his mistakes and grow as a person. The man who is always mindful of the importance of compassion and empathy will always seek to alleviate the suffering of others. The man who is always mindful of the importance of simplicity and moderation will never be overwhelmed by excess or indulgence. The man who is always mindful of the importance of honesty and transparency will always be trusted and respected. The man who is always mindful of the importance of self-control and restraint will always be able to resist temptation and overcome vices. The man who is always mindful of the importance of humility and modesty will never be arrogant or conceited. And who is always mindful of the importance of education and knowledge will always be intellectually curious and open-minded. The man who is always mindful of the importance of clarity and simplicity will always communicate effectively. The man who is always mindful of the importance of faith and spirituality will always find meaning and purpose in life. The man who is always mindful of the importance of trust and reliability will always be trusted and relied upon. The man who is always mindful of the importance of perseverance and diligence will always achieve success. The man who is always mindful of the importance of integrity and morality will always be respected and admired. The man who is always mindful of the importance of self-sacrifice and service will always be valued and appreciated. Of self-improvement and growth will always strive for excellence. The man who is always mindful of the importance of generosity and kindness will always be loved and cherished. The man who is always mindful of the importance of forgiveness and compassion will always be at peace with himself and others. The man who is always mindful of the importance of discipline and self-control will always be able to achieve his goals and ambitions. The man who is always mindful of the importance of perseverance and hard work will always be able to overcome any obstacle. The man who is always mindful of the importance of fairness and justice will always be able to uphold the truth. The man who is always mindful of the importance of love and compassion will always be able to build strong and meaningful relationships. The man who is always mindful of the importance of loyalty and devotion will always be able to inspire others and earn their respect. The man who is always mindful of the importance of sincerity and honesty will always be able to gain the trust and confidence of others. The man who is always mindful of the importance of knowledge and wisdom will always be able to make informed and wise decisions. The man who is always mindful of the importance of self-awareness and introspection will always be able to understand himself and his place in the world. The greatest wealth a man can possess is wisdom. There is nothing more powerful than a man who has conquered his own mind. A person who is always honest and truthful will never have to fear anyone. A wise man always speaks the truth, even if it is bitter. The company of the wise is like a mirror, in which we can see our own faults. Anger is like a burning coal, it only hurts the person who holds it. A good deed is never lost, it will come back to us in unexpected ways. The best way to avoid a problem is to anticipate it and take preventive measures. The true test of a person's character is how they treat those who can do nothing for them. Life is like a chess game, we must always be thinking several moves ahead. Patience is the key to success in all endeavors. To be content with what one has is the greatest wealth of all. A good friend is a treasure beyond measure. The man who speaks less but speaks wisely is the one who is truly respected. Happiness is not the absence of problems, but the ability to deal with them. The greatest gift one can give to others is the gift of kindness. The true mark of intelligence is not knowledge but imagination. To live a life of meaning, we must strive to be useful to others. The best way to overcome fear is to face it head on. The man who is always mindful of the importance of humility and gratitude will always be blessed with success and happiness. The wise man who speaks softly is more convincing than the one who shouts. A man who controls his senses will always be successful in life. A good leader is one who leads by example, not by force. True knowledge comes not from oaks, but from practical experience. It is better to do good deeds in secret than to boast about them. The most beautiful thing in the world is the smile on the face of a child. The most powerful weapon we have is the power of forgiveness. The greatest enemy we face is our own ego. A life of honesty and integrity is a life of true success. The true measure of a man is not in his wealth or his accomplishments, but in his humility and his compassion. The person who is free from anger is free from all troubles. Chapter 10, verse 99. The true meaning of life lies in serving others. The most important thing in life is to be grateful for what we have. The greatest wealth a man can possess is the love and respect of his fellow beings. The wise man is he who knows his limitations and seeks to overcome them. A true friend is one who stands by us in our times of need. The person who is kind to others is the person who is truly blessed. The man who is free from jealousy and envy is the man who is truly happy. The true test of a man's character is how he treats those who can do nothing for him. The most important thing in life is not what we achieve, but who we become in the process. The person who is humble in victory and gracious in defeat is truly great. The true purpose of education is not to accumulate knowledge, but to develop character. A person who has self-control is the master of his own destiny. The true wealth of a person is measured by the goodness of his heart. The greatest gift a person can give is the gift of forgiveness. The person who is content with what he has is the richest person in the world. The person who is patient and persistent can achieve anything in life. The person who is compassionate towards others will always be loved and respected. The person who speaks the truth has nothing to fear. The person who is able to control his desires is the master of his own life. The true test of a person's character is not how he treats his friends, but how he treats his enemies. The person who is able to control his tongue is able to control his entire body. The person who is able to forgive others is also able to forgive himself. The person who is able to endure suffering will also be able to enjoy happiness. The person who is able to adapt to change is the person who will survive in this world. The person who is able to keep his promises is the person who will be trusted by others. The person who is able to accept criticism with grace is the person who will improve the most. The person who is able to learn from his mistakes is the person who will succeed in life. The person who is able to see the good in others will also be able to see the good in himself. The person who is able to laugh at himself is the person who will never be defeated by life's challenges. The person who is able to control his anger is the person who will be able to control his fate. The person who is able to control his mind is the person who will be able to control his life. The person who is able to be kind to others is the person who will receive kindness in return. The person who is able to love unconditionally is the person who will be loved in return. The person who is able to see the beauty in everything is the person who will find happiness in everything. The person who is able to let go of his ego is the person who will find peace in his life. The person who is able to control his thoughts is the person who will be able to control his actions. The person who is able to see the truth in all things is the person who will be able to see the truth in himself. The person who is able to see the beauty in others is the person who will be able to see the beauty in himself. The person who is able to control his desires is the person who will be able to control his destiny. The person who speaks the truth will always have a clear conscience. One who gives without expectation of return receives without fear of loss. The true wealth of a man is his virtue, not his possessions. The wise win without weapons, they conquer without cruelty. Those who possess compassion will never harm any living being. Pleasure is brief and painful, while virtue endures and brings happiness. The words we speak reveal our character, and the actions we take define it. The greatest victory is victory over oneself. A good deed done to others is a good deed done to oneself. The true value of education is not what one knows, but how one lives. A person's greatness lies not in his birth, wealth or education, but in his character. Patience is the best friend of the wise, and the strongest weapon of the brave. The fragrance of goodness always remains in the hands of the giver. Anger is the enemy of justice, and the destroyer of harmony. To forgive is divine. It is the hallmark of the brave. The company of the virtuous is like a lamp that guides one's way in the darkness. The wealth of a country is not in its treasures, but in the character of its people. The best way to conquer an enemy is through patience, understanding, and love. One who has learned to control his mind has learned the secret of true happiness. True wealth is not measured by what one has, but by what one is willing to give. The wise are not afraid to admit their mistakes, and the foolish are too proud to confess them. True happiness is found in serving others, not in seeking one's own pleasure. The best way to find oneself is to lose oneself in service of others. The true test of friendship is in times of adversity. The greatest gift one can give is the gift of oneself. One who is full of envy will never find peace, and one who is content will never know sorrow. A true leader leads by example, not by force. One who has conquered his desires has conquered the world. It is better to be a person of few words and great deeds than to be a person of many words and no deeds. The heart that is filled with love and compassion is like a garden that is always in bloom. A good name is better than great wealth. Those who have conquered their minds are the true conquerors of the world. The greatest wealth is contentment with a modest lifestyle. He who seeks the truth will find it, and he who tries to hide it will be exposed. The truly great person is one who remains humble in the face of success and gracious in the face of defeat. A kind word is like a spring day, it brings warmth and joy to the heart. The greatest achievement in life is to know oneself. The true measure of a person's worth is not in what he has, but in what he gives. A wise person speaks with reason and listens with attention. The wise person sees the world as a mirror, and he learns from it what he needs to know about himself. The flower that smells the sweetest is shy and lowly. The true wealth of a person is not in his possessions, but in his character. To be patient in adversity is the greatest test of character. The wise person treats others with respect, not because of who they are, but because of who he is. A heart filled with compassion is a heart filled with love. The wise person is like a bee, he extracts only the essence of each experience and leaves the rest behind. The greatest strength is not in being strong, but in the ability to overcome weaknesses. The true test of friendship is not in prosperity, but in adversity. A person who has control over his mind has control over his life. The wise person is like a tree that bends in the wind but does not break. A person who speaks kindly is loved by all. Wise person is someone who is always learning. True beauty lies not in the face, but in the heart. The most important journey is the journey of self-discovery. The greatest gift you can give someone is your time. A person who is honest and truthful will never fear anyone or anything. A person who is respected by others is someone who respects others. The greatest wealth is contentment. A good friend is one who walks in when others walk out. The greatest power is the power of love. It is better to die standing than to live kneeling. A wound caused by a word can be worse than a wound caused by a sword. The world belongs to those who persevere. One who is patient will bear fruit in due time. The greatest treasure in life is a good education. Happiness is not something ready-made. It comes from your own actions. A good action performed in silence is better than 1,000 empty words. A person who is humble will never be humiliated. A good leader leads by example, not by force. The most important quality for success is determination. It is better to be virtuous and poor than to be rich and wicked. A true friend is like a mirror, reflecting back one's own qualities. He who does not know how to respect others will never be respected himself. To gain knowledge, one must be humble and willing to learn. A person who is honest in his dealings will never be deceived. Anger is like a burning coal. It burns the hand that holds it. The best way to predict the future is to create it. One should not be content with merely talking about good deeds, but should actually perform them. To be successful in life, one must work hard and be persistent. The greatest wealth a person can possess is wisdom. The wise speak little, but say much. One's true wealth is measured by the good one does for others. A man who is self-disciplined is his own master. The greatest gift one can give is to lend an ear to the suffering of others. There is no greater wealth than good health. A person who is content with what they have is truly wealthy. The greatest service a person can do for others is to teach them how to live. Patience is the best ornament one can wear. A life well lived is one in which every day is a step towards greater understanding. One should never do anything that will cause harm to others. Wisdom is the greatest weapon one can possess. A person who is kind to others will always be surrounded by friends. A person who is free from hatred will always have a peaceful mind. One's own actions determine one's destiny. The best way to deal with an enemy is to make him a friend. A person who is courageous in the face of adversity will always emerge victorious. A person who is honest in all their dealings will never be deceived. The company of good people is like a cool breeze in the scorching heat of summer. The best medicine is a pure heart. A person who has control over their senses is truly powerful. A person who is quick to forgive will always have peace of mind. One's true wealth lies in the knowledge they possess. A person who has mastered their mind has mastered everything. A true friend is someone who stands by you through thick and thin. A person who is humble in victory and graceful in defeat is truly great. The greatest wealth a person can possess is contentment. A person who is self-controlled will never be a slave to their passions. A person who is wise will always learn from their mistakes. The best way to lead is by example. A person who is filled with love will never experience loneliness. A true leader is one who knows how to inspire others. An honest and truthful person will always be respected. A person who is patient will eventually succeed. A person who is kind to others will always be remembered. A person who is skilled in their craft will always prosper. A person who is true to their word will never be forgotten. A person who is sincere in their efforts will always be rewarded. A person who is hardworking will always achieve their goals. A person who is always grateful will always be blessed. A person who is humble will always find favor in the eyes of others. Knowledge is the greatest wealth a person can possess. The wise person learns from the mistakes of others. A person who is without fear will always be successful. A person who is well-spoken will always be respected. A person who has control over their mind will have control over their life. A person who is disciplined will always be successful. A person who is brave will never be defeated. A person who is focused will always achieve their goals. A person who is generous will always have good fortune. A person who is content with what they have will always be happy. A true friend is one who rejoices in your happiness and comforts you in your sorrows. The best medicine is a healthy diet and a happy mind. An honest person will always be respected, even by their enemies. It is better to be patient than to seek revenge. A person who is content with their own accomplishments will never envy others. A person who is wise will never stop learning. A person who is virtuous will always be respected, even by their enemies. A person who is kind to others will always be loved. A person who is honest will always be trusted. A person who is humble will always be praised. The true measure of a person's character is how they treat those who can do nothing for them. A person who is self-disciplined will always succeed. A person who speaks truthfully will always be respected. A person who is generous will never want for anything. A person who is kind to animals will be blessed by God. A person who is patient will be rewarded in the end. A person who is forgiving will find peace within themselves. A person who is brave will never be afraid to face their fears. A person who is virtuous will always act in the best interests of others. A person who is humble will never boast about their accomplishments. The highest virtue is not to injure others. Honor your parents, for they are the source of your life. A truly wise person learns from their own mistakes and the mistakes of others. Do not hold grudges, for they will only weigh you down. The best way to avoid a quarrel is to walk away from it. A true friend is one who is there for you in good times and bad. The most precious gift you can give someone is your time. When faced with adversity, remember that this too shall pass. A person who is content with what they have will never be in need. The true test of character is how you treat those who can do nothing for you. A kind word can change someone's entire day. Do not underestimate the power of a simple act of kindness. True knowledge comes not from books, but from living life. The greatest wealth is good health. The best way to overcome evil is with good. A person's worth is not measured by their possessions, but by their character. The path of righteousness may be difficult, but it is always worth it. Patience is the key to success in all endeavors. One who does not respect the feelings of others does not deserve respect themselves. The greatest happiness comes from giving, not receiving. The wise person sees all as equal, and treats all with respect. To know oneself is the greatest wisdom. A true friend is someone who helps you in your time of need. The greatest victory is the victory over oneself. The most valuable possession is a clear conscience. Humility is the foundation of all virtues. Anger is a fire that consumes the one who holds it. A noble person is one who shows kindness even to their enemies. True happiness is found within, not in external possessions. The greatest teacher is one who leads by example. The world is full of suffering, but it is also full of the overcoming of it. The quality of a person's life is determined by the quality of their thoughts. A man's worth is measured by his deeds, not by his wealth. The beauty of the soul is reflected in the beauty of one's character. The best way to find oneself is to lose oneself in the service of others. The greatest act of charity is to help those who cannot help themselves. True knowledge is not found in books, but in the wisdom of one's own experience. The greatest gift is the gift of forgiveness. Wisdom is not attained by years, but by experience. The wise person speaks with a quiet mind and listens with an open heart. A gentle word has the power to calm the angriest heart. A true friend is one who stands by you through thick and thin. One's true character is revealed by their actions, not by their words. A wise person learns from their mistakes, but a wiser person learns from the mistakes of others. The greatest wealth is contentment with one's lot in life. The true test of a person's character is how they treat those who can do nothing for them. A life lived without purpose is a life wasted. One should speak only words that are true, kind, and necessary. A single act of kindness throws out roots in all directions, and the roots spring up and make new trees. A true leader leads not by force, but by example.